This past week, Pantheon Rise of the Fallen had their first live Q&A with creative director Chris Joppa Perkins, and Minus, also known as, will definitely be riding a bear mount at launch because they used the stealth skill to get it. You don't want to know how many takes that took. This new monthly Q&A replaces the old Parting the Veil. The whole thing with the Veil of Alaris.
The Veil of Alaris.
See? I learned how to say it properly. It only took a couple decades and a whole mob of people on the internet telling me how wrong I said it. I learned. Now, while this live Q&A was not really something I was prepared for, I was very excited for it. And I left with more questions than answers. And stay tuned to the end of this because I have an announcement for you that's going to be related to these Q&As going forward. So what was covered? Well, there's two big things that were covered: taming and mounts. But I also want to talk about something important, which I think is necessary here. And we'll get to that at the end. Feature creep. Before we get too deep though, I want to make something very clear that it was mentioned in the stream that these are post alpha. These are not things that I expect to show up on the road to alpha in the newsletter this month. They could be wrong, but as far as I can tell, this is all stuff that is future. Because these systems are not implemented, because they are in the very early stages, the context of this video is mostly going to be discussion and speculation, alongside some of the things that we learned from the stream. I got major Ultima Online vibes from this, so we'll see if you did too. Before we jump into this, I want to say thank you so much to our channel members: Archbishop, first name, last name, yes, that is a real person, Jim McKinsey, Gallerine Moonsong, and Dupre. Thank you so much for supporting this channel. So you might be wondering why there's this sudden change in lighting and why it got so much brighter. Well, so speaking of the members, I am going to be investing all of that membership into getting a new SSD because I lost the entire video that I recorded. So everything from here on out is recorded the next day. So thank you for the support. I need a new SSD. So what's the gist with taming? Well, you can tame mounts, and that seems to be about it. Everyone can, not just a specific class or race, but everyone, as long as you do the prerequisite quests and meet the leveling requirement. It is an opt-in system that you can choose to unlock. It sounds like taming will be its own skill of sorts, and one that will be leveled. Questing and level requirements were mentioned as specific paths towards unlocking the skill. In short, you will be able to tame some animals in the world to become your mounts. You will use a skill on your action bar you gain from opting in with questing and level requirements. You will need higher taming skill for certain animals, and there are mechanics in taming like the approach and duration of the tame that will make it more challenging than buying it off the cash shop so you can do a mount off with Asmongold. A lot of this feature still felt up in the air to me despite all the details we got. And as with anything that's not implemented, it's subject to change. One of the things I keyed in on though was the mechanics of approaching tameable mounts and how things like your scent could impact you. And what was my first thought when I learned you could hide your scent when approaching? That's right, can this be used in the acclimation system? Let's say you're approaching a nightmare. Would it help if you were acclimated to scorching? Or what about a giant spider? Would acclimation to toxic help? To my eventual penguin mount, do I need to be acclimated to frigid? Now, none of this was specifically mentioned, as it seems like not all of this is completely figured out just yet. It is something that I can hope that VR considers though. Class and race limitations or bonuses to taming were not figured out yet either. But if they do go this route, I hope there's some innovative thinking in how to make different classes all have some sort of advantage. A warrior having greater endurance to ride the mount that they're trying to tame. A druid having the greater ability to sneak up on an animal, hiding in the bushes. A necromancer being able to kill it and raise it as an undead steed, a loyal beast that will be with you forever and ever. You know, innovation. But one thing was very clear. Taming is a means to an end, with the end being the mount and travel. And travel appears to be something Pantheon is taking very seriously, as Joppa began the stream by lamenting the heart and soul of MMOs have been gutted with the advent of fast travel mechanics, and yes, he did confirm that he still stands firm on no flying mounts in Pantheon. So if taming is just a means to get the mounts, what makes mounts so special? Well, essentially, they are important to something you'll be doing a lot of in Pantheon: traveling. Traveling in Pantheon is supposed to have a sense of arrival. And with that, taming and mounts are a way to both immerse yourself in the world while also speeding up travel to reduce potential for tedium. And mounts, it seems, are more in depth than I thought. Tamed mounts will have different stats, and from the sound of it, levels. One of the stats that was keyed on often was the will stat, a stat that determines how long they will stay with you. Some special mounts may have additional traits that could assist you in other ways. Off-the-cuff mentions of climbing, aquatic, and stealth were exciting, but they are not the goal of the system. This is simply to get from point A to point B. VR seeks to balance that excitement of arrival and accomplishment that comes from, say, walking through Kithikor Forest as a level 1 halfling, versus the tedium of travel when it becomes too long. This is also where my alarms start to go off, because travel can be a barrier to socializing in an MMO, especially in short time frames. Perhaps not early on, but I do hope as the game matures, they continue to evolve on travel and grouping as necessary to meet the player base and world scope needs. And before the angry comments start, no, I'm not saying plane of knowledge, but new travel routes that can speed up travel as the world grows, new boat paths, new mountain passes, new portals. As MMOs expand, travel has to, or the world just becomes too large. And VR does seem to be aware of this, as in passing, it was mentioned that things will evolve as the world grows. What this means, only VR knows. Mounts are supposed to be transient in Pantheon. It does not seem like the first horse tame will be your forever companion. Going back to that will stat, your mount may decide it's done carrying you all around Terminus. It might just decide to leave. The exact way this will work wasn't fully fleshed out, and I doubt it will be until long after we are deep in alpha or beyond. But it sounds like the use of a stabling system will add some permanence to the temporary nature of tamed mounts. When talking about immersion in the world, this makes more sense than going out to tame a mount every single time you want to go somewhere. It'll be interesting to see how deep the stabling system goes. Will this be like stables in Ultima Online? Will you have to return to a specific stable to get your stabled mount, or will you be able to pull a mount from any stable in the world? This ties into a bond system as well, which made me wonder, can a mount become permanent? Don't we all want Bill the Pony from Lord of the Rings? A loyal steed? Or perhaps Roach from The Witcher 3? And if we have to earn them, earn their trust, rather than purchasing them from a vendor, could they mean more to us? Per Joppa, we already know mounts cannot die, so the way you'd lose them seems to be from them leaving you willingly, as tied to their will stat. So I guess essentially you can't Yoshi these. But other stats beyond the will stat raise more questions for me. A swift mount may be faster, while others may be able to sprint for longer. And in this stream and others, it's been made clear that sprinting is the desired movement speed increase in game, rather than long-term base run speed modifications. During the VR livestream, user Not the Rope had a very important concern that I think is valid to point out, with mounts potentially having different speeds or sprint durations. I snagged the comment and want to share it with you all verbatim. I'm getting flashbacks of early WoW and groups getting split because half the group had epic mounts and half had normal mounts. I hope this is something VR considers with such a social group-centric game. Players with mounts, players without mounts, with different speed mounts, etc. A system as simple as one that modifies your group mounted speed to the highest mount of the group while you're within range of each other might work. Or perhaps passenger mounts. There's a balance to be struck in making a faster mount or more rare mount more desirable without fracturing the ability to group. But perhaps I'm overthinking it. I wouldn't take a druid over a rogue in EverQuest just because the druid could get to the group faster, for example. I left the most controversial thing to the end because I know with every kind of announcement or pseudo announcement like this, two words come to mind. Feature creep. Feature creep is something that's become somewhat synonymous with any in-development MMO, any in-development game, really, but specifically with crowd-funded MMOs when it is outside of what the original stated scope of the game is when the money was given by the backers. Any kind of announcement that feels or seems a little bit like feature creep can make backers feel anxious or nervous that the game is not going to launch in a timely manner or launch at all. And for people that are skeptical of the games, it may be kind of, a moment of like, hey, look, see, I told you so. Now, I'm a tremendous backer of Pantheon, and it should be pretty obvious from just looking at my channel. But that doesn't mean that I haven't, taken time to make jokes at the expense of other games when it comes to feature creep, like Star Citizen, or taking legitimate concern with games that create new games as an addition to their in-development goals, like Ashes of Creation, Star Citizen, and Camelot Unchained. So while I may be inclined to give Pantheon the benefit of the doubt just because of my own thoughts about the project, that's not what I'm trying to do here when I say that I don't feel like this is feature creep. We got an hour-long discussion of this feature, and to me, there are 3 reasons why this does not feel like feature creep. First, this is planned for post-alpha, meaning this is longer term and not something at the forefront of the team's plans. I'll be more concerned about delays as we get closer to beta and launch if this particular feature causes them, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be impacting current timelines for alpha. Second, the way the system was described, at least to me, it sounded like it could be tied to many different systems throughout the game. This feels like something that is part of the plan, not an addition to the plan. Traversal mechanics more and more as I listen to the Pantheon team seem to be very integral to the game, and this, like climbing, is another traversal mechanic, and they're trying to do it in an intentional way that feels immersive. And third, while the detail is deep, it doesn't feel excessive. Mounts, I think, in most games are a given. In fact, I remember the shock when New World didn't have them. So the main changes here from the norm would be adding in taming, but there's a solid bedrock to pull from. There is clear inspiration in this from Breath of the Wild, but to me it also made me think of a game like Ultima Online, which is over 2 decades old at this point. None of it feels out of place with the game that they're making. It feels like it is just a natural progression, and it feels like something that has been there from near the beginning. To close out, I'm excited about this because it's another thing that can set Pantheon apart from other games. It is another thing that, moves Pantheon from EverQuest 3 to its own thing. It's something that I would like to see, but I'm going to hold my judgment on it until I can see the actual implementation of it. It sounds interesting, it sounds cool, but I don't know how I would feel. I'm going through thinking, do I have more preferences on this than I thought I did? Because I kind of want a semi-permanent mount. I kind of want a permanent mount. I want Bill the Pony. But I also like the idea of taming. I realized that I left this Parting the Veil with more questions than answers, and that's kind of cool. I also mentioned an announcement about Parting the Veil at the beginning of the stream. Well, as you may have known, I was part of the Pantheon Plus U panel that was directly after Parting the Veil. See, I am saying Parting the Veil as many times as I possibly can to show you that I have learned it is not veal. I can learn. It just takes a long time and a mob of people to tell me that I'm wrong. Over and over and over again on my most watched video ever. I also know that melee is melee and not melee, but that's taken away from the announcement. I was lucky enough to be part of that Pantheon Plus U, which is a format where we talk to you about what you thought, and we give some of our thoughts as well. I am very excited to be a part of this because these are things that I have watched Pantheon Plus do for years, and I'll be on this special edition of it. The other Pantheon Plus U will continue to go on as usual after each dev stream. So I am happy to announce, as I kind of already did announce, but I will be part of this. I will be part of the 3-person team that consists of myself, Man of Rohan, and Desrin of Pantheon Plus. I could not ask for better co-hosts, and I am really excited to jump in, and I will be doing this every month. So if you have interest in Pantheon and you want to discuss it with us, please hop over to Pantheon Plus. Please join us on these Pantheon Plus U's. I look forward to seeing you there. And if you want to know more about Pantheon, please take a look at this video over this way. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Redbeard Flynn. I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate you sharing or liking or everything you do to help grow this channel. It means the world to me. So thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.